The Halifax Slasher, 1938, Halifax, England. A man named Percy Waddington staggers into a police station with slashes across his wrists and chest. He claims a mysterious stranger attacked him with a razor-bladed instrument in the dark. The town is terrified. Then more victims appear. 7 people reported being slashed by the phantom attacker over the following weeks. National newspapers ran the story. Scotland Yard was called in. Women refused to leave their homes alone. Men formed neighborhood patrols. The entire town's behavior reorganized around an invisible threat. Halifax believed in a genuine, violent predator. The working-class community, already frayed by the Depression and rising European tensions, the police took it very seriously, as did the press, which amplified every new incident into a kind of shared, waking nightmare. Scotland Yard's investigators discovered the truth. Every single victim had inflicted their own wounds. This is now cited as a classic case of induced self-harm within a hysteria event. The June bug epidemic, June 1962. A woman reports that an insect bit her, and she immediately feels nauseated, dizzy, and breaks into hives. She collapses. Within hours, 62 of her co-workers are in the hospital with identical symptoms. The outbreak moved through the factory with visible speed. The company physician called exterminators. Vague reports of a strange odor circulated. Investigators collected insects from the premises. Meanwhile, the hospitalized workers showed classic presentations of toxic exposure. Except the toxicology reports came back clean. Workers were certain they had been poisoned. Union representatives suspected intentional neglect by management. The news media covered each new hospitalization. The local health department investigated the plant's ventilation, its fabrics, its cleaning chemicals. Everything checked out. A landmark sociological study published afterward found that the outbreak clustered entirely among workers who were friends with existing victims, worked in close proximity, and were under significant occupational stress from poor conditions and mandatory overtime. No insect capable of causing those symptoms was ever found. The Great Nun Meowing Incident, 15th century France. One nun begins to meow like a cat. Not once, not as a joke. Then a second nun begins. Then a third. Soon the entire convent erupts in meowing at a fixed hour each day. The meowing became synchronized. Neighboring convents reported similar events. Local townspeople gathered outside the walls, terrified. Word reached church authorities. The church dispatched investigators who determined the nuns were possessed by demons, specifically that cats were familiars of Satan, and this was spiritual contamination spreading from one weak soul to the next. The bishop threatened physical punishment. Several nuns were flogged. The meowing stopped. The Salem Witch Trials fits, January 1692. Betty Paris, 9 years old, and her cousin Abigail Williams begin having seizures. They bark, they contort, they report being pinched by invisible hands. Their physician finds no physical cause. He says the words that will destroy 19 lives. Bewitchment. The convulsions spread rapidly through the young women of the community. Ann Putnam Jr., Elizabeth Hubbard, Mary Walcott, one after another, they fell into fits during church meetings and public examinations. The Puritan community had no framework for psychogenic illness. Satan was not a metaphor, but a present reality. The afflicted girl's symptoms were taken as forensic evidence. 3 women, a slave, a beggar, and a cantankerous elderly woman were the first accused. From there, accusation became its own epidemic, consuming neighbors, former rivals, and eventually a minister. When the governor's wife was accused and the court finally lost its credibility, the trials collapsed. 19 people had been executed. Modern theories range from ergot fungus poisoning, which causes hallucinations and convulsions, to straightforward mass psychogenic illness amplified by theocratic social structure and interpersonal grievances. The Strawberries with Sugar Fainting, 2006, Lisbon, Portugal. An episode of a popular Portuguese teen drama airs, in which several students develop a mysterious rash, dizziness, and difficulty breathing. Within days, real students across Portugal are presenting with identical symptoms. Hundreds of teenagers are hospitalized. The outbreak spread through schools across the country with alarming speed, following the social network of the show's viewership almost exactly. Students who had not watched the episode showed far lower rates of illness. Several schools closed. Parents inundated emergency rooms. Portugal's National Health Institute was called to investigate. Students were certain they had been exposed to something real: a virus, a food contaminant, an airborne allergen. Several demanded to know why their school's building was making them sick. Teachers who had not watched the episode struggled to understand why their students were suddenly unable to stand. The National Health Institute ultimately concluded this was a television-triggered mass psychogenic illness, one of the first documented cases of a fictional media depiction causing a real-world health outbreak. The Hollinwell Incident, 1980, July 13th. 1,000 children have gathered for a marching band competition. The sun is out, the mood is festive. Then a child near the front collapses, then another, then another. Within 2 hours, over 250 children and several adults are on the ground. The collapse moved through the crowd in a visible wave. Children reported nausea, dizziness, sore throats, and leg weakness. Ambulances queued along the country road. Some children were unconscious. Parents who rushed onto the field sometimes began feeling sick themselves. The initial hypothesis was environmental: pesticide spray on the grass, contaminated water from a shared supply, even a low-flying crop duster spotted earlier that morning. Local officials launched a toxicology investigation. The press covered the incident extensively, using the word poisoning in early reports, which itself accelerated the community's fear. No toxin was ever identified. The children recovered uniformly and rapidly once removed from the environment and the social context of the event. The incident is now studied as a case of mass psychogenic illness, triggered by heat, anxiety, excitement, and the visual contagion of watching peers collapse. The Dancing Plague of 1518, Strasbourg, July 1518. It begins with a single woman named Frau Trophea. She steps into the narrow street outside her home and begins to dance. No music, no partner. She cannot stop. Within a week, 34 others have joined her. Within a month, the number swells to 400. They dance through the night and through the following days without rest. Their eyes were open but unseeing. Bystanders who touched them sometimes began swaying themselves. Some collapsed from heat stroke and heart failure. Others danced until their legs simply broke. Local physicians ruled out supernatural heat in the blood. The town council, baffled and desperate, did something remarkable. They hired musicians, reasoning that the afflicted must simply need to finish whatever dance had taken hold of them. Shrine priests whispered of divine punishment. Citizens blamed Saint Vitus, the patron saint of dancers and nervous disorders, whose wrath could allegedly curse the faithless into endless motion. By September, the outbreak had burned itself out, its victims removed to hillside shrines. Modern researchers classify this as a textbook case of mass psychogenic illness. A stress response so powerful, it became physically contagious. The Tanganyika Laughter Epidemic, January 30th, 1962. A boarding school for girls in Kashasha, 3 students begin to laugh, not politely, not at a joke, in violent rolling waves that last for hours, then days, then weeks. The laughter was not joyful. Witnesses described it as agonizing. The students' faces locked in expressions closer to pain than humor. 95 of the school's 159 students were eventually affected. The school was forced to close, but the laughter followed the students home. It spread to the surrounding villages. 2 more schools shut down. The epidemic lasted 18 months and affected nearly 1,000 people across multiple communities. Local and government officials initially suspected food poisoning or a novel virus. Medical teams arrived, ran tests, found nothing. Village elders spoke of spiritual imbalance. Some accused witchcraft, a neighbor's curse cast through the school children. Rumors spread faster than the laughter itself. When the schools closed and the social groups dispersed, the laughter stopped, a defining feature of psychogenic illness. Modern analysis points to the extreme stress of newly post-colonial Tanganyika, the pressure on the first generation of girls formerly educated in that region. Mass hysteria is not a malfunction. It is, in a strange and disturbing way, evidence of something that binds us together at a level beneath language, a shared nervous system, distributed across communities. When one person breaks, under the right conditions, the break propagates, not because we are weak, but because we are wired, deeply, profoundly, neurologically wired to one another. The body speaks what the mind cannot process, and when enough bodies are speaking at once, history stops calling it illness. It calls it an event. We may not be dancing in the streets of Strasbourg, but we are not, in the ways that matter most, so very different from those 400 people who simply could not stop.